Hi, I'm Judy Redmond. I'm the Universal Design Coordinator for the City of Winnipeg, and I'm here to talk to you a little bit today about accessibility and age-friendly design of sidewalks and pathways in the City of Winnipeg. Creating a walkable community that meets the needs of a broad range of pedestrians is challenging enough in a city the geographical size of Winnipeg, but balancing all the non-pedestrian needs such as bikes, buses, truck turning radii, and volume of traffic, along with weather and soil conditions, also have to be considered when designing for walkability. Change the page. But regardless, people and their behavior should be at the center of that design. By people, I mean everyone, women and men, young and old, various backgrounds and knowledge levels, familiar and non-familiar users, various ages and cultures, persons who are disabled or non-disabled, along with any assistive devices they may use. If we design for the more vulnerable populations, like children and persons with disabilities, the design should not present any barriers for anyone. That's the premise behind universal design. It's good design for the majority, and the majority is diverse. The diversity of the population requires wider thinking about all sensory, physical, learning, mental health, and neuro disabilities. Inclusive design helps build socially cohesive and economically sound communities. Change the page. The term active transportation is often misunderstood and at times misused. Active transportation, as you may know, is any mode of transportation that is human-powered, yet AT is often used to describe only cycling facilities. The City of Winnipeg is currently moving toward adopting a pedestrian cycling strategy that clarifies the need to have cycling and pedestrian modes separated where at all possible. It also speaks to the need for adequate maintenance, including snow clearing. It defines the need to separate sidewalk snow clearing priorities from roadway snow clearing practices, so residential and bus routes become more important for people walking. The type of pedestrian cycling facility has to be balanced with space and width requirements for the whole public right-of-way, including vehicle lanes, transit lanes, cycling facilities, and walking facilities. It also has to take into account underground and above-ground services, existing property lines, and developer needs for marketable lots. Grade separation possibilities is also a consideration, for example, at bridges and railway tracks. Change the slide. Consideration for how people with disabilities navigate public rights-of-way is important for a few reasons. Persons with disabilities often have no choice but to walk or take the bus simply because driving is not an option for them. Many are not private vehicle owners and therefore rely on good, navigable public rights-of-way to get around. Our population is aging and aging with disabilities. This population represents $311 billion in spending power in Canada alone, so this makes good business sense. The conservative estimate of 11.5 million people who are affected by disability in Canada will have the opportunity to contribute to the economy if they can get around and to and from places of business to obtain goods and services. People with disabilities and older adults are living long and healthier lifestyles and do not care to stay at home and be isolated. They maintain their independence as long as possible by remaining active through walking. Change the page. Public transit increasingly becomes a reliable source of transportation as a person ages. But we need to remember that it is the whole trip that is important. A person has to get from their home to the bus stop and from the end of trip bus stop to their destination. Switch the slide. Spending the time consulting with pedestrians at the front end of a design may take longer for project managers, but produces a much more usable facility in the end. Gary Toth of the American Aging and Retired Persons magazine says, "People put the place back into streets," and I really agree with that. The following are some things we've heard and learned directly from consulting with pedestrians, especially those with disabilities. Safety features are our most vulnerable Safety features for our most vulnerable pedestrians can create better streets for all of us. That might entail signals that count down an amount of time remaining to cross the street, or yellow detectable panels at curb ramps to inform you of an imminent pedestrian crossing at a vehicular intersection, or an audible chirp or cuckoo that tells a person who is blind that the don't walk signal has changed to a walk signal. Including features such as darkened textured bands to assist a person with low vision to maintain a straight path of travel without obstacles is very inclusive. Features such as these mean more people will feel comfortable walking, which increases the number of people choosing that mode of transportation. Route choices will increase, width and paving patterns will be consistent and reliable for people who can't see, but also for children who are not attending to their surroundings or others with cognitive disabilities. Clear and consistent paths of travel create predictable and safer environments for pedestrians, but has the added benefit of easing the way for snow clearing activities. Change the slide. Another consideration is the type of assistive device that is used to navigate the pedestrian realm. Change the slide. In an international comparison of standards and research for the Rehabilitation, Engineering, and Assistive Technology Society of North America conference, Ed Steinfeld speaks about the anthropometric requirements needed for larger spaces for various wheeled mobility devices. Oftentimes, standards for wheelchairs are measured as a stationary piece of equipment. Truly, it's a dynamic width of the chair as a seated person maneuvers that provides a usable measurement. Within new standards such as the City of Winnipeg Accessibility Design Standard, there's a recognition that equipment is changing. There are more people who use scooters, might require attendant services, or use walkers and wheelchairs of a bariatric size. It's imperative that that be taken into account when designing for the built environment. The minimum standards of the National Building Code of Canada, for example, currently only design for less than 50% of the population who use a wheeled mobility device. Change the slide. For example, a standard accessible washroom stall is 1,500 by 1,500 millimeters. That measurement is wall to wall and includes the space where the toilet encroaches. Most wheelchair users could not enter the washroom, close the door, and transfer onto the toilet in that small space. Universal design tries to attain closer to the 95 percentile of people who use various mobility devices by requiring 2440 by 2440 millimeters turning radius. That is a scooter size of turning. Change the slide. Tying the end users back into the process as a design progresses and is completed is imperative in order to gain knowledge and process improvements. Seeing design decisions as interdependent, a way to learn new information that is inclusive and cooperative, helps us learn each other's perspectives and provide a much better environment for all. Change the slide. Whether it is busing or walking to and from work every day, perhaps navigating streets with two small children in a carriage, maybe going shopping with an elderly parent, even waiting at a transit station with a child with a disability or accompanying a husband who's had a stroke to a medical appointment. These are not special situations. They are everyday occurrences that must be considered when building pedestrian spaces. Careful design and thoughtfulness in transportation planning and infrastructure can help take the stress out of these everyday experiences. Change the slide. In Winnipeg, multi-use pathways are quite commonly used as off-street facilities through greenway and park-like properties. It's more comfortable for slower pedestrian traffic and cyclists to share space in these circumstances, as a pathway can be built to a wider standard, generally 4 meters, because there are no bus stops along these street facilities as well. Pedestrians have less chance of interacting with the cyclists along the way. Winnipeg has begun to install some new on-street infrastructure to increase opportunities for mode choice. In doing so, we've learned some lessons. One is that slower moving people and faster moving people may not be compatible in the same pathway system. They may need some separation to feel comfortable and safe. How about passenger side vehicle loading lifts that have to be deployed into the bike pathway along the parking stall? That needs to be considered. What about drivers who are wheelchair users loading or unloading from their driver's side doors? Adequate connections between the curb edge and the walkway must be designed into the facility so they can access facilities. What happens when cyclists sometimes shortcut between buses and the curb edge? Does that present an obstacle as a cane user exits a bus? Change the slide. Buffered bike lanes are relatively new in Winnipeg. You'll see some of them along Pembina Highway if you take a drive down there. Because these facilities allow bikes to bypass bus stops by going to the right of the bus platform, there is a high potential for pedestrian and cyclist interaction. In order to reduce the possibility for adverse interaction, features were added to the pavement to clarify which space is meant for bikes and which space is meant for pedestrians. Transit users who are blind have told us that they find the bus stops difficult to locate on these wider facilities from the sidewalk. Raised, elongated yellow directional tile is being installed to bring the pedestrian who is a cane user to the head of the bus stop by the use of cane detection. Post-construction, we talked to people using these tiles and they felt they were helpful. Change the slide. It is now a matter of course that detectable warning surfaces are installed at any new or rehabilitated intersections in Winnipeg. Although various tests were performed with raked and grooved concrete, brick products in different colors, the community clearly requested that the city stay consistent and use yellow truncated dome materials only. The type of products that ended up being specified in the standard construction specifications for the city passed the test of winter snow clearing and longevity of color over time. Surface-mounted products did not pass the test of time and they were peeled off by the blades during snow removal activities. Change the slide. A recent amendment to the Winnipeg zoning bylaw now requires that a clearly delineated pedestrian route that provides access from the public sidewalk to the front entrance of any building in a new development be included, excluding single and semi-detached homes. Change the slide. We also now require a percentage of total parking stalls to not only be delineated as accessible, but also include a percentage that are van accessible with an access aisle. Change the slide. The main point I want to make in this discussion is that Winnipeg has moved forward in its attempts to accommodate different mode choices, and in doing so has consulted with various users. This has resulted in the use of consistent tools to help people navigate their transportation options. In listening and learning from the most vulnerable right-of-way users, we have developed specifications and built some new facilities that have the potential to work well for everyone, but we continue to improve as we learn from each other. Change the slide. In closing, I just wanted to say thank you for listening. Once again, I'm sorry I wasn't able to be with you in person, but I will leave you in the capable hands of Chris Sobkowicz, who is the city's Access Advisory Committee coordinator, to answer any further questions. Thank you.